Hi guys, happy day 2 of social distancing and distant learning. I'm in my backyard today. I'm trying to give you guys different views of my house, which I'm sure will excite some of you, probably a little too much. Okay, so we read the first chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I asked you guys to think about some description of the setting. We were looking at RL 4.3, describing, I hope this isn't too loud for you, but describing setting, describing characters, and describing plot events. So I asked you guys to think about how you would describe this setting. It is in Britain. I wonder what you guys thought about the time period. The way that I think about Harry Potter is it's not quite in modern times like us, but it's definitely not way back. And obviously we talked about this as literary, and it's really not even historical fiction. It's not based on true events, obviously, as we know. So it's something that's really very, very different. So there isn't really a clear time period, but we know that they have televisions. We know they have cars and motorcycles. So I think of it as fairly modern times, but maybe not really today. Let's see, it was published in, looking for the publishing date. I know it was published in the probably mid to late 1990s. So, yeah, 1997. So, you know, modern times. I think it was probably set in, like, 1997. But I also asked you guys to think about the description of that specific part of Britain where the Dursleys live. To me, it seems like a very, very suburban neighborhood, like a very stereotypical, clean-cut hedges, plain street, normal houses that kind of all look very similar. Just like a very normal neighborhood. And I think that our author set up that normal neighborhood and described it like that so that we could get a contrast to some other settings that we'll see as we go through the book. I also asked you guys to think about describing your characters. Think about the Dursleys, especially Mr. Dursley, and think about Dumbledore, and think about the kind of contrasts. So when we describe characters, that word that we use, a word to describe a character, is called a character trait. And the things that we look for in our text to come up with those character traits, we look for characters' feelings, we look for characters' actions, characters' words, characters' motivations, and sometimes we can look at thoughts as well. So if we think about Mr. Dursley, the character traits that I think of for Mr. Dursley are a little rude. Maybe almost a little skittish. Almost kind of scared or constantly worried or fearful of something, right? I think about his interaction with Mrs. Dursley, that he's almost scared of her, which is kind of atypical when we think of couples and husbands and wives, for the husband to be scared of what the wife would say. So that's pretty interesting to me. And some of the evidence that I can find to support that he's maybe a little bit rude, definitely some of his actions, and especially in the office, right? Let's see. Where he was yelling at everyone. Oh yeah, on page 4 it says he yelled at 5 different people. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more, right? That kind of tells us that he's pretty rude. I mean, he's selling drills. Like, how much yelling do you think that you would need to do to customers who just want to buy your drills? So he strikes me as kind of a rude, very stern, abrupt kind of a person. And then Dumbledore, on the other hand, strikes me as a complete opposite person. I think we could describe Dumbledore as being calm and wise and serious, but a different kind of serious than Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall was very serious all the time. Dumbledore had kind of a light, almost caring air about him. Even though we don't see him caring about anyone, he's definitely seems like just a wiser person all around. And he does seem very calm and very rational. Very, like, taking things as they come and understanding them and just working to know and understand things about the world. If you came up with any other character traits, please let me know. Comment on this post. I think you can comment. I don't know. I'm still figuring out Google Classroom and all of that stuff. So you should be able to comment on this post. The last thing that I wanted to talk about, especially with our 4th graders who recently read Percy Jackson, is any parallels that you might see. There was a big parallel that I saw. Obviously, there's a parallel between Harry and Percy. A little boy who has these special powers and now is going to grow up not knowing that he has these special powers. However, there's this huge parallel with He Who Shall Not Be Named, and the fact that no one calls Voldemort by his name, except for Dumbledore. And in Percy Jackson, we saw that it was frowned upon for anyone to use the names of the gods. So that's a huge parallel that we see right away with this book. So I thought all of those were really interesting. I am going to split this video right now before I start reading Chapter 2 because it took me literally 15 hours to upload that last video, which is why I didn't have it up for you guys on Monday morning when it came, because I had started uploading it and it wouldn't upload because it was too long. So I'm going to stop our video right here. I'm going to let this be kind of the commentary on Chapter 1. Following up with all of that, I want to hear about your character traits. I want to hear any additional setting description that you might have come up with. If you illustrated the setting, I would love to see a picture of that. And then our next video will be Chapter 2, and then we'll kind of go with our videos like that, where we read one chapter and then we kind of circle back around to it with a separate video, and then read the next chapter. Okay, see you guys in a minute.